The lamb dhansak is a beautiful, rustic, homely dish. It comes from the Iran region, so sort of Central Asia, and it's a really lovely example of different cultures coming together to create beautiful food. So just to start off, I'm going to put my pan on the hob, and the vegetables that I like to use in this dish are butternut squash, just because it's got a vibrant colour. I tend to use whatever's in season, so you could use sweet potato, you could use pumpkin if you like. I like to put aubergine in there because it gives a nice texture, and some red onion. And what I've already done here is I've chopped those up into nice sort of fairly chunky sizes because I like a bit of texture in the final dish. So I'm just going to pop those straight into my pan. There we go. And the other part that is really quite important in a dhansak are the lentils. So I've got 3 different types of lentils that I'm going to use. This lentil is a split urid bean. So it's just the black beans that have been split and washed, so there's no skin on them. I'm going to use roughly about 60 grams of that, which I'm going to pour straight into here. I've also got the lovely red lentil, and again 60 grams of that. And the final one I'm using is called toor dhal. If you can't get hold of this, you should be able to get hold of it in most supermarkets or Indian grocery shops. If you can't, just miss it out. It doesn't really matter. You can use 2 different lentils. You can use 3 different lentils. But what you need to make sure is that you use a split lentil, not a whole lentil, because that takes much longer to cook. So just pour that in as well. And then I'm going to add approximately about a litre of cold water, just to start those cooking and softening up. So I'm going to put my heat on. I'm also going to add a teaspoon of salt, just to get that going. Just making sure all the vegetables and lentils are all covered. I'm also going to add about 10 or 15 sprigs of mint, and the reason that I do that is because it gives a lovely freshness to the dish. So I'm just going to chop those up very, very roughly and put them straight into that pan. There we go. And just put those in. I'm going to keep an eye on it because I don't want it to boil over, but I'm just going to place the lid on that and leave that to cook for about 20 minutes until the lentils are soft and the vegetables have cooked through. The vegetables and lentils are cooking away, so I'm going to move on to cook my onions and make up my spice paste. I'm going to heat up a little bit of oil and then just put my onions in there. And because this is a lamb dish, I want my onions to really go a lovely dark golden brown colour. So I'm just going to leave that on a gentle heat and move on to the more exciting, fun stuff. Okay, so to make up the spice paste, I'm going to be using lots of dry spices. And what I would normally do is I'd grind them in my pestle and mortar. But because I'm using cassia bark and it's going to be quite chunky, I've decided to just do it in my coffee grinder or spice grinder. So starting with a teaspoon of cumin seeds. They give that lovely earthy flavour, which adds to that homely feel. Then I'm going to put in a teaspoon of coriander seeds, about a 3-4 centimetre piece of cassia bark, and that gives just a very gentle sweetness in the back of the palate. 4 cardamom, and just give them a little crack just to help them break down as we whiz it all up. And then I'm going to put in just a few black peppercorns. I'm also going to add a nice big heaped tablespoon of fenugreek. And this is kasuri methi as we call it. So again, this is about that homely comfort. So I'm going to blitz all of that together. And once I've got to that fine powder that I'm looking for, I'm going to add some turmeric as well. So blitz that just for a few seconds. Just have a look. I think it's pretty much there. Yeah, that's looking fine. So you've got that lovely sort of fine powder, which is what you're looking for. It smells really lovely. Okay, so once that is ready, keep an eye on your onions as well. Just give them a stir every now and again, because we want them to brown nice and evenly. There we go. The next part is, I like to do my dry spices first and make sure they go really nice and fine. If I do my dry spices and my wet ingredients together, I won't get as fine a powder. So that's why I like to do it separately. So I'm just going to pop that into my blender that I'm going to add all my wet spices into. Just make sure you get all of the last bits of that. So into this, I'm also going to add 6 cloves of garlic that I've just peeled. Just pop those in. And about a 3 centimetre chunk of ginger. I'm not going to bother peeling it because I don't really think you need to. So just chop it up into chunks, pop that in. And I'm going to put in 2 chillies as well. I'm going to give that a blitz through just to get a nice paste. Just use your spoon and just push everything down. Just make sure it's all crushed up. There we go. It's looking really nice. It's getting really fragrant as well. So into that, I'm just going to take that out just so you can see. It's almost like a fairly coarse paste. It's not wet. It's quite dry, but that's what you're looking for. And then what we're going to do is put some turmeric into there as well, which I'll do in a little while once my onions have browned off. They've got a little bit further to go because I want them to be a fairly nice dark brown colour. Whilst they're browning off, I'm just going to go and check my lentils and vegetables and make sure that they're cooked through. The vegetables and lentils are cooked through, they look lovely. Before I bring those over, I'm just going to finish off the masala sauce. Now that my onions have caramelised to that beautiful dark brown colour, I'm going to add my spice paste straight into there. So just be a little bit wary whenever you add any raw flavours like this to your heat, because they may sort of make you cough and splutter a little bit, but that's just all the raw flavours cooking through. This is going to be really lovely. I can feel it. Okay, so that's starting to fry off now, and those aromatics are starting to come through. So what we're looking to do is just make sure that the raw ginger and garlic cooks through. So I'm just going to turn my temperature up a little bit. If at this point your spice paste catches on the bottom of the pan, just add a little splash of water just to lift everything off, and that will help to cook it down as well. So whilst the paste is cooking down, I'm just going to get my next bits and pieces ready. So into that, we're going to put some tomatoes to make up that masala sauce. So I've got some that I've chopped up earlier, but I'm just going to finish chopping the rest. I like to use fresh tomatoes in this dish just because it complements all of the fresh ingredients that we've got in here. So just some nice ripe tomatoes. I'm using 3 here. So 2 or 3 nice big ones will be absolutely fine. So just chop them up nice and finely and get those ready. There we go. Just give that a stir through. I can see and I can smell those aromatics coming through, so I know that I'm ready to put my tomatoes in now. The spices are just starting to catch on the bottom of the pan as well, so the tomatoes going in will help to lift everything off that. So those go in now. I'm going to put these last few bits on as well, and we'll give that a stir. So we'll just give that a stir, because what we're looking for is those tomatoes to break down. It won't take very long, and we'll end up with a really nice, thick, luscious masala paste. Whilst that's cooking down, the next thing I'm going to add in is some tamarind paste, and I've just bought some here. You can buy it readily now in supermarkets. You can either buy a block that you can rehydrate and use that water, or you just buy a paste. And I'm just going to put in a nice big heaped teaspoon. And it's quite an important flavour in this dish, because this dish is about that tanginess from the tamarind, it's about the spiciness from the chilli and the sweetness from the vegetables. So it gives a beautiful balance of flavours. So just stir that in and leave that to cook for about 5 or 6 minutes, just until those tomatoes have broken down. You've got a really lovely thick tomato paste. So all the tomatoes have broken down and the masala is looking really lovely now. It's really come together, everything's melted together, and it's just one lovely thick paste. So into that, I'm just going to put my half a teaspoon of turmeric for that beautiful curry colour. Just a little dash more. Stir that through, and I'm going to add my meat. So the meat that I'm using for this is leg meat that I've trimmed, taken the skin off, taken the fat out. And I'm just going to pop that in. You could use neck fillet if you want to. Neck fillet works really well with this kind of dish as well. So just pop that meat in. And then just stir it all. Just make sure that you coat that lovely meat with the beautiful thick paste. I'm going to turn it up a little bit, almost trying to seal that meat. There we go. So you can see there's no bits of onion floating around, there's no bits of tomato, it's all come together into a really lovely paste. So whilst the lamb's cooking, I'm just going to go and grab my cooked lentils and vegetables and bring those over. So there you go. It's all cooked through. I know the lentils are cooked through because they're all nice and squidgy between my fingers. The vegetables are nice and soft, but they're still chunky, and that's what I want. Some people, when they make a dhansak, what they tend to do is, at this stage, they will blitz the lentils and the vegetables together, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But for me, the whole point of having this rustic dish is about that natural chunkiness. So I like to keep them fairly whole. Okay, so the meat's had a few minutes, and now this is the fun bit. What we're going to do is we're just going to transfer everything from our lovely vegetable saucepan into the meat. So just very gently start to pour in those lovely lentils. Just incidentally, just so you know, Dhansak, the dhan in Dhansak means dhan, and that means lentils, and sak means stew, so it's a lentil stew. Just a bit of trivia. You never know when it might come in useful. There we go. So once I've got most of it in, I'm just going to pour the rest in. There we go. Okay, so once it's in, I'm just going to stir that through, and there you start to see your final dish coming together. That looks absolutely lovely. I'm just going to pop the lid on the pan, and I'm going to leave that to cook for about 40 minutes to an hour. It really depends. You have to sort of keep coming back, just checking that the meat's cooked all the way through. Just one point to bear in mind with this dish, do be careful because it's got quite a thick consistency to it, it can sometimes catch the bottom of the pan. So every few minutes, just come and give it a little stir. Don't stand there stirring it, but every 10, 15 minutes, just make sure it's not caught the bottom of the pan. Make sure you leave it on the lowest heat. And one thing you'll see is it's almost like a volcano erupting. You'll get a little blop, blop. And that's what it's supposed to look like, but just very gently make sure you stir it through. So I'm going to leave that for 40 minutes. And then hopefully we'll have a delicious stew to eat at the end of it. The Dhansak's been bubbling away for about 40 minutes now. It's looking like it's all come together, the sauce has all come together, and it smells really, really quite distinct. It's got a very sort of almost a tangy aromatic to it. I'm going to have a little taste because I just want to check the seasoning. With a dish like this that's got lentils and vegetables in it, you just need to make sure that you're happy with the amount of salt you've got in there. See, for me that needs just a touch more. So I'm just going to sprinkle half a teaspoon in. And I'm just going to add a little bit more chilli to it. So that's looking delicious. There you go, a beautiful, rustic, home-cooked lamb Dhansak.